Welcome, welcome, welcome to the season finale of King's Conversations. My name is Jermaine Porter. I'm the Boys of Color Initiative Coordinator for Durham Public Schools.
And I'm Dr. Daniel Kelvin Bullock, Executive Director for Equity Affairs for Durham Public Schools. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Dr. Bullock, I'm super excited about the season finale of King's Conversations. We are bringing together two totally different worlds. We're bringing athleticism, we're bringing academic intelligence, we're bringing construction work, we're bringing construction, we're doing all the great things. So first of all, I'd like to give a special shout out to my king, none other than, and listen, he's named after a great man, Jermaine Porter. I love you, son. All right, so we're ready to get started.
Jermaine.
So already we want to make sure that we shout out our kings who are having watch parties throughout Durham. We'll shout them out throughout the entire conversation. So right now, we want to shout out Burton Elementary School. Shout out to Burton Elementary. We have WG Pearson is also in the building. Shout out to WG Pearson, DJ Craze. Thank you. We want a special shout out to you for all the wonderful things you did for the community recently. We really appreciate that. But we'll go ahead and get started with our very first person. Everyone might know him from some things he's done in his past. We had a conversation earlier, a few minutes ago, about if he can still do the things that he used to be able to do. So without giving him away, we're just going to show a little something, and then we're going to bring him out to everybody. Dr. Bullock, we want to present to some and introduce to others. John, they used to call him Helicopter, but he still goes by.
Hey, I think they still call him Helicopter, man. I think they still call him Helicopter.
We're going to call him John Humphrey tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you guys, John Helicopter Humphrey. How's it going, Mr. Humphrey?
Man, great, man. How are you doing?
Bro, I'm just super excited to have you on here with us this evening. I just want to know, can you still dunk, or are you dunking donuts?
What kind of dunk do you want?
We'll let the kings decide. So any kings that's in the bit that's already on the chat, go ahead and let us know what kind of dunk you would like for Mr. Humphrey to do. We'll see if he got a goal outside while it's going down in the King's Conversations. He can take his computer, his phone outside, and see if he still got some hops. But not only do we have John Helicopter Humphrey, we got somebody that I've known for a long time. This guy is full of energy. He's very intelligent. So check this, Dr. Bullock. So he's a general contractor. He not only that, but I must shout out. He went to.
I'm pretty sure I know where he went.
He went to the absolute number one public HBCU in the United States, North Carolina A&T State University. If you walked into a food line in the local area, odds are he is the one that connected all the electricity in the building. I present to some and introduce to others. My homeboy, love him to death, Shamari Evans.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing, fellas?
What's going on, Mr. Evans? We're so happy to have you here tonight, Mr. Evans.
I'm happy to be here.
So we are excited. Once again, we have additional people that we have to shout out, Dr. Bullock. We have the Young Men of Excellence program, Charles Hamilton Houston Foundation. They're having a watch party. Special shout out to them. We got the Curriculum and Instruction Department for Durham Public Schools. They're in the building. Real quick, Helicopter, no. One of the King's coordinators said, "You dunking donuts." That's all I got for you. You think I'm joking? I just want to. It's right there. There it is. DJ Craig said that. But we definitely want to go ahead and get started with this wonderful conversation. Dr. Bullock, if you go ahead and get us started, that'd be outstanding.
Yeah, so we usually just start off. We'd like for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and explain why you agreed to participate in this King's Conversation.
Who's first?
Let's start with Mr. Evans.
Well, being from Durham, I thought it'd be important that I took a part of this conversation. So as I can relate was like being from Durham, coming up inside of Durham city limits and coming through the school system. I actually went to R.N. Harris Elementary School, Burton, and Holton Holton Middle School at that time before leaving going to another city. So I kind of know what it's like being from inside of Durham and coming from that environment.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for shouting out those schools. R.N. Harris has their Kings program, and so thank you for joining us today. Mr. Humphrey, Mr. Helicopter, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you agreed to participate in this conversation.
Well, I do a lot of motivational speaking, and my goal is to let the kids know, because they look up to the Steph Currys and they look up to the people they see on TV. I mean, I was on TV too, but I let them know they didn't grow up the way you growing up, but I did. And if I can make it, they can make it too. So they got to see a face of somebody who can relate to them and preach the word to them. Well, not preach. You say preach, they start going, not listening. But for some reason, because I can dunk a basketball, I can tell the kids the same thing that their parents or somebody else would tell, and they'll listen to me. All the kids but mine.
I understand that.
Yeah, we know how that goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Mine's in the room right now. He's not listening to me. So I understand. I understand completely. So check this, guys. So I want you to go back into your think about this for a little bit. What grade were you in when an educator positively impacted you as a young man of color? And how did they do that? We'll go ahead and start with you, Mr. Humphrey.
I think I was probably 6th grade. And it's not going to sound like motivation, but it was totally motivation. I never forgot this. I was in the classroom, just chilling, not really doing much. I'll do just enough so when I get home, I don't get a whooping. Back when I was a kid, you get whoopings. And I had my teacher come to me and told me I need to do my work. She said, "You're a great athlete, but only 5% go pro. You're not going pro. So you need to do your work." And you know what? And how crazy it is, that motivated me. I did my work, but I said, I'm going to show her I'm going pro. But I knew that I had to do my work also, but that lit a fire under me unlike anything ever else. And when I first went pro, I wrote that teacher a letter, and I actually brought it out to my game. And I told her in one of my speeches, "You're motivating me more than anybody ever." Now, my motivation was to prove her wrong, but motivation is motivation, no matter how you get it.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that story. I appreciate that. Mr. Evans, please share with us the same thing. What grade were you in when an educator positively impacted you as a young man of color, and how did they do it?
I would have to say that would be the 4th grade. My teacher name was Miss Board. I'll never forget her. She at Burton Elementary School. I had been too long. Got to that school from R.N. Harris. I used to get in a lot of trouble. Of course, in the neighborhood, a lot of fights. So going to that school, she actually gave me. She made me believe in myself. She actually showed me how smart I was. Actually got me in a program called, at that time, I believe it was MSN, where we used to go to Carolina on Saturdays, UNC, Chapel Hill, and start taking classes. That made me get in. My mindset is, you actually want to go to college. So I'm on a college campus at this early age. So out of the environment, of course, Burton, the neighborhood that in, I was in McDougal Projects. So a kid from that background ended to go to college setting at that early age. It built my motivation up at an early age. No, I'm smart. I can do this. So it actually changed my mindset. Going from there to other academic programs. So that's where it all started.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, Mr. Evans. So one of the things that we try to instill in the Kings and Durham Public Schools is exposure, right? Exposure breeds opportunities, and you guys being here are part of that. So I think that it was important for your teacher at a young age to be able to expose you to those things so you understood that those were options that you actually had, and those were opportunities that you would be able to take advantage of to get you to where you are today. And Mr. Humphrey, it's so ironic that you say that because our Kings now, sometimes someone says something negative to them, and they take that more so to the heart than to use it as motivation to try to prove someone else wrong. So for you to be vulnerable enough to say, you know what, my teacher said I wasn't gonna make it, but look at me now, right? You say helicopter, people might know who helicopter is before they know who John Humphrey is at this point.
Correct.
Dr. Bullock, did you want to share anything?
Yeah, I just want to shout out that MSEN program that Mr. Evans was speaking about. I'm familiar with that program too, which took place on the campus of UNC Chapel Hill, another great university, by the way, but we won't go there. But just thinking about that, and also thinking about, unfortunately, a lot of our young men sometimes have to be motivated or moved by negative influences that sometimes the culture and the environment in schools isn't necessarily appreciative or affirming for young men of color. So, Mr. Humphrey, I was just thinking about, it's unfortunate that had to be the type of motivational energy you had to work off of. And what we'd like to see in schools is that is affirmation, is something positive being planted into the lives of our young men that prompts them to grow and develop into who they can be, like you did. So, but thank you for sharing that, because that is too often the story for some of our boys. And thinking about different challenges that we have to navigate. Our next question is around civil unrest in America. So we know that there's a lot going on with civil unrest and gun violence, sometimes in communities of color. As Black men, what are your thoughts about some of the things you're seeing with civil unrest and gun violence, and or gun violence? And what advice do you have for our young Kings as they grow up as Black or brown boys in America? So those are some big topics, but what are your thoughts about what we're seeing with civil unrest and growing up in this society?
Let's go to Mr.
Where you want to go?
He's leaning up, Mr. Humphrey. Mr. Evans leaning up like he's ready to go. Mr. Evans, you go ahead and tackle it. Go ahead. You good.
Well, gun violence has been a problem in our neighborhoods for a long time. And we've been trying to figure it out. How can we get these firearms out of the hands of these young men? How can we get them to other programs? Maybe Mr. Humphrey could have a better answer on that, by him being such a good basketball player. Maybe they need to spend more time in facilities, maybe other programs, because evidently whatever after school programs or we have in place is not working, because these kids don't have the guidance once they get home. A lot of people don't have two parents in the house, and a lot of parents are working and need the kids a lot of times to fend for themselves. I know we were like that growing up. A lot of times, you had to cook for yourself. You had to take care of younger siblings. So you had to fend for yourself. It's just that really we that's something we had to figure out. I don't have an answer to that question.
Thank you for that. I think oftentimes as men of color, people expect us to always have answers, and it's okay to say, I don't know. I need to go and find. So that's real big, and I appreciate you sharing what you did share with us, Mr. Evans. Mr. Humphrey?
I agree, Mr. Evans. This is tough, but I think something you need to make it harder to get. A gun is real simple, real easy to get, and that's not right. I think a young kid can get a gun before they can go get some cigarettes. And two, I lean towards one of the things, if we can't, and it's not going to sound politically correct, but go with me. If we can't keep it out of these kids' hands, and if they just keep going, we need to maybe have a program or something that we bring a firearms expert in to let them know this isn't a toy. It's very dangerous. Like I have a carry conceal. I have a gun for 10 years. And my daughter, which is 21 now, my son is 19 in 2 weeks. Both of them, by the time they was 10, could take a gun apart and put it back together. But they know it's not a toy, but they're not scared of it also. So knowing that it's not a toy, they don't mess around and play with it. I think a lot of these accidental shootings and stuff, even though they shouldn't be around a gun, there's maybe a gun at the home, they playing with it and think it's a toy. They need to know the magnification and how powerful this thing really is. And I think that maybe, again, we don't have the answers. That'll deter them from messing with this and realize that it's not a water gun. It's something that if an accident happens, that person ain't coming back. And that's a hard thing to have on your heart for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And just thinking about, one, that guns are not toys. These things do take people's lives. And I think it's like multiple issues that we're dealing with because one of the challenges we've been seeing has been with some issues of gun violence in Durham and in the surrounding communities. And then we also think about the civil unrest connected to law enforcement and an abuse of power by law enforcement on communities of color also. So, and those are big questions, right? And who really has the solutions to that? But I do think even Mr. Humphrey, what you're saying with programs to support communities, programs to support young people in developing different types of knowledge, even if it is knowledge around guns and how they can be used, how to interact with law enforcement, things like that may be able to help us, yield some better outcomes with our young men. So thank y'all for sharing those responses.
So check this, Dr. Bullock, right? And like Ms. Humphrey, go with me for a second. So we're talking about teaching our young men about firearms, right? And in Minnesota, we have a person who was a police officer for 26 years and pulls out a gun and assumes that they have a taser and shoots someone in cold blood. So I wanted to sit there for a second, right? The first initial statement was talking about the civil unrest. And to be honest, I don't believe that any of us on this screen are a threat. But the perception, when we're pulled over, might be we're a threat. So we go back and we look at so many different cases and so many different things that's occurred in America to cause this particular situation. But us as men of color, we carry the brunt of that. So one of the questions isn't on that I want to ask you guys in reference to the civil unrest is something that we've talked about before in King's Conversations. Do you think that, tell me about the burden of you as a man of color during this time in America?
Well, like Mr. Humphrey, I have a concealed carry, and I'm carrying probably 95% of where I'm going. Yes, I know I'm going somewhere where I can't take it. So first and foremost, I'm going to protect me and my family. So we're going to leave that right there. So
appreciate it. I appreciate that. So I do want to, Dr. Bullock, real quick, we do have some additional people who's joining us. R.N. Harris Kings. Someone mentioned R.N. Harris Kings are in the building. We have Thomas Mentor Leadership Academy. They've joined us, wonderful partners with us here at Durham Public Schools. But I do want to share, if there are anyone who's watching on Facebook or on YouTube, if you have any questions for our guests, please feel free to share those in the comments, and we will make sure that we get those questions to our guests.
Hey, Ms. Porter, real quick,
Yes,
I want to add something. Sometimes, and it's hard, I know us four, we understand as a black man, like you said, we're assumed as a threat. Sometimes, majority times than not, And I tell my kids this: sometimes you have to lose the battle to win the war. Meaning, you could be completely correct. He could be completely wrong. Just abide. Don't resist. Don't just do whatever he say. He calls you what? Just resist. Because at the end of the day, if you get to go home, we can figure everything else out. But if you don't get to go home, then what? So my message I always preach. I know. I mean, if y'all married, y'all know. Sometimes you gotta lose the war. I mean, lose the battle to win the war. So just I know you didn't do nothing wrong. I know that you didn't do this. You didn't. There's a lot of kids on TV or a lot of grown-ups on TV that didn't do nothing wrong, but they're not here. So be whoever they want you to be. Just do whatever they say, and then we can figure the rest out later. I pray that we just do that. Sometimes we let our ego. I'm not doing this. I ain't. I'm nah. You can't. You just can't.
Yeah, to add on to that, so many times, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one of us driving in the wrong area, the wrong time, maybe on a nice vehicle, and especially back in the early 2000s, though, I'll pull you over. You don't argue with the cops just for the sake of argument. You know, you're on a side dark road, just comply, go along, try your best to don't don't have a rebuttal or smart remark. Show your license, show your ID, and like you say, you get to live, fight another day.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I definitely think that's good advice for our young men. And I definitely agree that as we have interactions with law enforcement, we want to keep it as calm, cool, and collected as possible. Now we know historically that doesn't mean that everything's going to turn out the way it should, but
Correct.
it is more likely that things will turn out as they should. And you are right, Mr. Humphrey. You live to fight another day, and you live if something incorrect is handled in that procedure, you live to file a complaint about whatever happened in that situation. So thank y'all for that.
Yeah, and one thing I want to lift up, someone just put in the chat. They shared that they think that kids know the power of a gun, and they love it because it gives them a sense of power. I think that to a certain extent that is true, right? I have this, so back up off of me, then use that. So thank you so much for sharing. We also have some additional kings that are sharing with us. We have the School for Creative Studies. They're sharing with us. We also have the School of Arts for Boys Academy, who's joining us as well. We just appreciate you guys. And then Dr. Bullock, yes, that's fine. We're good. So, Mr. Humphreys, you used to play for, I was talking to somebody earlier about you, Mr. Humphrey, right? And I was telling them who we have, and I was like, you remember AND1? They're like, yeah, I remember AND1. You know, I said, the street basketball people? Yeah, I remember that. I was like, so we have a helicopter. They said about AND1, they said, they made shoes too, didn't they? Look, and I was like, yeah. I was like, so we got the guy who used to be able to dunk. They're like, helicopter? I was like, yeah. So we just, to that point, right? If you could just talk to us about your journey and some of the challenges you faced as a man of color along that journey, and some of the things that you experienced during your time there and even now in your current role.
I mean, growing up, I didn't have a lot. My grandma raised me. She did what she can do. I, Basketball is my outlet, and I hate to say this, but my cousins, my other family, they did drugs. They sold drugs, and at a young age, they pulled me to the side and told me, "You are the one that made it, or was going to make it." So to this day, I'm 40 years old. I've never drunk any alcohol or did any drugs in my life because I that's not what I want to do. I seen what it did to people, and I don't want nothing to hinder my mind. And I don't even take aspirin. I just hate it. And when I went to college, man, it was hard, but I wanted to play ball. So then I didn't want to stay in school. So I left early, turned pro. So people think and one, but I played overseas 15 years. It wasn't in the States, so they don't know. And I left. And I came home, like Mr. Evans said, I bought a brand new 7 Series. Got pulled over and who car is this? What you doing with this? How can you afford this? I went to Raleigh to buy a car, and no lie, with my agent, they said, "Are you really trying to put this 23-year-old black man in a high performance sport car?" Word for word, I'll never forget that. And that's the first time I ever really experienced racism at 23 because I'm from an area that it's not predominantly black, but everybody cool, everybody, you know what I'm saying? So I never really experienced till I left, and it really bothered me. Like I didn't understand why, but it bothered me so much. And I ended up getting a car from somewhere else. Same car though. And some of the adversities that I faced and challenges, I committed to Georgetown out of school. I wanted to go to Georgetown. Oh, John Thompson, Allen Iverson. But my daughter was born at 18 years old, had a kid. I didn't listen to my parents, had a kid, but I knew I had responsibilities. So now I go to a junior college in Raleigh, Lewisburg, because I couldn't go to Georgetown. But you know what? Instead of looking like that, I was like, my daughter's born. I'm close to home. I still get a hoop. I just want to hoop. And I went to school, man. Then I went D1 after that. Then after that, I finally got my shot to go pro. I went pro. I played for and one. And I think one of the biggest adversity at this time, my son is born. So now I got 2 kids. I'm out of school. I'm making great money overseas in the ABA. I finally get my shot at the NBA. I had a tryout. Well, they was calling me for a tryout, and they told me the first time I had a tryout, they told me that they wanted me to quit everything that I was doing. So I'm like, player, I'm not 18, 19. I'm 26 years old. I got 2 kids. I got family. I can't give up the maybe. I mean, I can't give up the for sure for a maybe because I'm not young. So I'm saying this because a lot of people ask me, why are you never in the NBA? So then 2 years later, Doc Rivers. Now everybody know Doc Rivers. And Gary Payton then was at Boston. Doc Rivers came and watched me play. I dropped 65 in front of him. So this was like a Wednesday. So Friday, I was gonna get a 10-day contract to go play with the Celtics. So I go to the game on Thursday night. I'm sitting on the front row. I see Gary Payton go down. I'm not a point guard, so they had to go get a point guard. So that's another adversity that I had to face. And I said, it just ain't meant to be. So I stuck to my role, and I continued to play ball overseas and do everything. And I know I'm going around circle, but here's the main thing I want to tell everybody. All my accomplishments that I did was good, and everybody think it's good. My most accomplishment that made me feel the best, once I finished, I retired. I played 15 years professional. I'm the all-time leading scorer in Japan. I got the most points ever scored in the ABA. I mean, Dr. J, everybody played in the ABA. It's my name, number 1. But all of that, it don't compare when I decided in 2017 to go back and finish my degree in college. Go to school, get your degree. Sorry, I get emotional. I'm sorry I was long.
No problem. Thanks for sharing it. And also, I don't know if we have time later. I might want to ask about just that exposure around the world and what that has meant for your life. Being able to play overseas and what that showed you, what that taught you, that you could bring back to the States when you were able to come back. But I may come back to that in a moment. Mr. Evans, I wanted to ask you, so, you're a general contractor, electrical engineer, putting that North Carolina Agriculture and Technical State University degree to good use. Share with us. Share with our audience what being a general contractor entails and the challenges that you encounter in some of your work, and what are some of the projects you've completed?
Okay. Well, general contractor is I'm a builder, so I'll go into a piece of land or existing building, put up a building. Let's say my most recent project was one of my most recent Blaze piece. I took a shell of a building. I go on the inside. I do total construction. I'm also an HVAC contractor, which is heating in there. So heating, cooling your home, your business, electrical contractor, licensed plumber, North Carolina and South Carolina. So I go into a building with my crew, totally renovate it or build from the ground up, or like I say, ground up or rehab. That's what I do. So some of the what was the rest of the question? Sorry.
Yeah, what are some projects you've worked on, or like some different building or electrical projects? And I'm sitting here thinking we got a few schools whose HVACs have gone out in Durham. We might need to call you here.
I love to put a
right.
bid on it. I love to put a bid on it. But I do a lot of work for housing authorities, housing authority units, like Mr. Porter said, food line rehabs, a lot of mom and pop businesses starting up storefronts. So, and I say one of the challenges was, it seemed like the more licenses I got, the higher the bar was raised. Because early on, after coming out of A&T, I was picking up a lot of small projects that didn't require bid bonds. A bond is when you have to have a certain credit score or a certain amount of money in the bank to be able to get the job. So I was winning a lot of these projects, and most of these projects I went to, I was the only black guy in there, and I was young. I started my business in my senior year in college. So you're looking at a 22-year-old black guy coming to these projects, bidding on stuff with these big companies, and of course I was on a smaller scale, but they were still bidding against me, and I was winning because they couldn't compete because I'm doing everything in the house. So I win 2 or 3. Next thing I go to the next bid meeting. Oh, there's a rule for Mr. Evans now. He needs this extra bond. How much money does he have? Can he afford to do this whole job out of pocket? No, these are some of the challenges, and it seemed like every step I moved up, another thing came into play. But I worked through it. I never stopped. Don't stop when you meet obstacles. Fight through it.
Real quick, Mr. Evans, you talked about bidding and bonds. Could you share explain that a little bit for our kings and what that means? And you also talked about how rules may have put in place the Mr. Evans rules. So what did that look like as a young black man, a young gifted and black male from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, going to these places and bidding? But do you think the color of your skin had any weight while you were going and bidding? So if you could just explain what that bidding process looks like. What is it like for anyone who's listening and might be interested in this type of occupation?
Well, anytime you go into a room and there's 100 people and you're the only person that looks like you, then it automatically in your mind, when you start getting singled out for different issues, it's going to automatically come down to you getting singled out because of your color. But that's the way a lot of people want to take that. If the playing field seems like it's a little tainted in everyone else's favor, and when it comes to when you walk in and you're known, you become known as this guy who's going to win this project. And a bid, by the way, is a price, a quote. I've received all my paperwork, design my layout, my price, and the bond is pretty much a guarantee that the job is going to be done. At that point, Greensboro didn't require a bond under, I think it was 300,000. No bond was required. Anything over 300,000, you needed bonds for. Pretty much as insurance, which they charge anywhere from on a $3,000 bond, they may want $10,000 cash, which you don't get back. So imagine a small business. Not only do you have to come pay your workers out of pocket, buy your material out of pocket, then you have to come up with $10,000, just to put down for insurance. So that'll deter a lot of people. They actually deterred me until I got in a position where I could actually come back and come after those jobs. So the thing was always, whatever your craft is, always perfect it and try to be the best that you can be, or put yourself in a position to succeed. Don't just, and when an obstacle comes, don't just back out. If I had to just quit, I would have. Well, I would not have. My construction company would not still be in existence. I've been self-employed. I'm not a multi-millionaire or anything, but I've been self-employed for almost 20 years. So after graduating from North Carolina A&T, I never took a job. I never had to fill out resumes and go seek for jobs because I started my business while I was in school.
Outstanding. So I appreciate you guys sharing that. Dr. Bullock, your face looks like you want to ask a question.
No. Actually, I was just thinking about like the challenges of having to navigate that type of space, and like you were saying, whenever you're the one, you're the person of color in that majority white space, that's going to pose some challenges automatically. And historically, we have seen some rules will be created to sometimes keep people from being as successful as they could be. So that's what all the face was. Yeah.
Okay, I got you. I thought it was because of the next question. I know you're a music guy, so I'm gonna let you go ahead and take this one because I know how much you love music. You might want to rap a little bit, but
okay, no, I'm not rapping. I'm not rapping, but
it's the season finale. So Dr. Bullock, you might want to give us that.
No, I'm not gonna do that. But as we were crafting these questions and thinking about recent events, there was a hip hop artist who recently passed who was like really significant in hip hop culture and Black culture in general. And I'm speaking of DMX and in his passing. And I was just wondering, like, for you all, was DMX an artist that you listened to, that you vibe with? Did he have an impact on your life? And just thoughts about what his life meant to people and his contributions to the culture, if you'll say.
Well, DMX music, that's a good way to get the job site hyped up. You want to keep the energy going. I might pop some more to wake the guys up. But yeah, back in the day in college, DMX was a good time. When it was younger days, it was time to turn up. We all know his struggles throughout his life. He's a very spiritual guy, and it was sad to see it end that way. He will be missed.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, with me, being on tour, we in New York a lot, so we have a lot of artists always come out. So I've spent a lot of time with DMX, and man, he's just a great dude, just naturally great dude, and he, unlike most of the other people, he wasn't putting on a show. Like, he was who he is, and to be truly genuine, maybe to a fault, but to be truly genuine and not put on a show and try to get money and try to do this really is amazing, because a lot of these cats out here now, they are not who they portrayed to be, and he was, man. I think he meant a lot to the culture because he was himself. He showed you that you can be yourself and you can make it. And again, but now sometimes you get a lot of money, be around a lot of places, you need to scale down, don't do some crazy things, because that might contribute to the untimely death. Yeah. But like I said, you can always, sometimes these kids, and I just say kids because I got 22-year-old. They hang with a crowd and try to be one of the crowd instead of being themselves. So I guess one of the things I'm trying to say, always be yourself, because you're special. Everyone is special in their own way. Why you want to be like somebody else for? Be yourself. If somebody don't like it, you will find a crowd or a person that will like it, and people will gravitate to you because you stand on your own. So don't never try to be like someone else.
Yeah, I can definitely co-sign that, and I think one of the things that resonated with me from DMX's life from day one is he came off as an authentic, real individual, and a person who was spiritually grounded, a person who cared about others, And just thinking about, I was recently listening to an artist that he collaborated with probably more than anybody, which was Swizz Beats. And Swizz was just saying when DMX became a big artist, he had all types of money, but he wasn't into spending it on, you know, lavish things and buying certain cars or wearing a lot of jewelry or anything like that. He was really more interested in just staying true to who he had always been and being able to connect with all types of people. And again, that's not to throw shade at anyone who, if they're able to attain that level of success, they choose to live it up in a different way. But I think that's something for us to think about too. Like even when for those of us, for our kings who are fortunate to, you know, aspire to some of the highest levels of success, how do we still be able to connect with, you know, communities who are facing challenges, people who are facing different challenges, and not lose touch with people? So that's something I was thinking about too. Thank y'all for sharing those responses.
One of the things that you guys were talking about, and Mr. Humphrey said specifically, was be yourself. Right? I think it's important for all of our kings to understand that as you grow up and as you're continuing to grow and figure out who you are, it's okay to be that person, right? It's okay to stand out sometimes. It's okay not to necessarily have to go to where all the cool people are, because you have certain goals or things that you want to accomplish. So it's almost like, I'm not going to tell you that going to North Carolina Agricultural Technical State University, being in that environment, you had to have had some type of structure to be yourself when other people are wanting to go places and do things. Well, you know, you have a test and you know you have to focus in order for you to do what you're supposed to do. And Mr. Evans wouldn't be where he is today, or Mr. Humphrey wouldn't be where they are today, if in fact they did not hold true to who they are and hold true. So I would say to all of our kings that are listening, please take it from these two wonderful men of color and Dr. Bullock as well, who shared, it's okay to be yourself and to stand out, right? You can go and hang out with the people, but you have to understand that at some point you might need to pull away because you got different goals, and you don't want to be in Durham your whole life, right? You don't want to be in the particular neighborhood your whole life. You don't want to be in North Carolina. You want to be able to travel. If you're not being your authentic self, you could get drawn into certain situations that you're not necessarily interested in being in. So I want to kind of take.
Well, hold on, I just want to say one thing. Nothing wrong with staying in Durham, though. Nothing wrong with staying.
No. Durham is a wonderful place.
Projects in Durham right now. Durham was looking kind of nice these days.
I'm saying some people might want. Some people might want to get.
Yeah, I was on my own neighborhood, and there was some houses over there that's going for like 400,000. It looked like something. Man, it's changed a lot.
That's another King's conversation.
But that's definitely. But I wasn't saying that it's okay to stay in Durham. But some people might want to ascend and go to. They might not want to attend school at a central, but maybe want to go to attend the #1 public HBCU in the nation. So I digress. But let me come back. So to that point, right? To that point, as you look back over your life, both of you, and I want you to kind of think about this because we have like maybe 15 minutes and a couple more questions. If you look back over your life and these experiences, what would you say is one thing that changed the trajectory of your life to get you where you are today? And we'll go with Mr. Evans first.
Yeah, let me go first. Mr. Humphrey, a better speaker. So I would say it comes back to what you said about the decisions you make in your life and your goals. And when I was in North Carolina A&T, my first 2 years, I kind of was partying a little bit too much, and I was there on scholarship. So I got a letter in the mail one day say, "We are no longer paying for your school." So, and I was like, "Oh man, I gotta go back. I gotta go back home." So I got an apartment, worked my butt off. Luckily, I was blessed enough to take electrical trades in high school. That was a good decision I took. I made because I was able to do it while in while working in college and allowed me to pay for my apartment and some other things. So when I got that letter, I went home, got my tools, did electrical work, saved my money up, pay out of pocket, stopped hanging around with a lot of friends like we used to hang around with Mr. Porter. But we friends, we family today. I just had to cut it off for a little bit to get that degree. At that time, you know, all thing I knew was like degree, you finish your degree. So so I love my friends to death. So we still hang tight, but a lot of those guys could actually do that and go to school. I couldn't do both. So I had to pick one. And I chose to separate for that time period, finish school, get my business going, and then come back around and do those things at a later date.
Real quick, Mr. Evans, I want you to touch on how it, because you talked about skills trade, and I just want you to hit that real quick because you were fortunate enough to go to a 4-year university. That's great. But you have a trade that you're actually able to use your hands with. Could you just talk about the importance, and you actually hire other people who might not have gone to a 4-year university, but they're able to they know they have a trade and there's something that they know how to do really well. Could you just talk to our kings about that real quick, please, sir?
A lot of people learn from hands-on. Maybe you one that you don't learn from going to school or going to class. Maybe you learn from showing or doing somebody showing you, or you doing it, actually doing it. So when I was in the 10th grade, I signed up for electrical trades. My teacher, I was pretty good at it. My teacher ended up hiring me. I worked with him until I graduated high school, and it stayed with me ever since. And off that one trade, it led to everything else, because just being around that industry, everything else came to me. Watching HVAC guys put air conditioning units in, watching people framing, watching plumbers, and actually trying it myself, you know, taking some extra classes to get my certifications, so I'm be able to get my certifications and adding that into my business. I started my electrical business first, and then I went added general contracting, added HVAC, and then added plumbing. And over the years, I didn't just start out with all the certifications. I just built myself over the years. Yeah, I hire a lot of young kids. I hire them, teach them on the job training.
Thank you so much, Ms. Humphrey. If you could share about what changed the trajectory of your life to get you to where you are today.
And in no way am I advocating this for anybody, because don't do this. You wait, get married, get your family. However, Mr. Humphrey at 18 had a baby girl. So Mr. Humphrey at 18 wasn't playing basketball, wasn't doing stuff for himself. He had a girl he needed to take care of. So I got my daughter tatted on my arm. So when I want to do something crazy, I look down at my arm like, nah, I can't do that, because it's not about me no more. No one cares about John no more. It's all about her. Through my whole career, my son, he felt left out, but her name was on every one of my customized pair of shoes overseas, because this is what I was doing it for. And my son name he got the best name, John Humphrey. So he was on stuff. But that changed completely, because y'all know your parents, you think of stuff totally different when it's not you, when it's about your kid. And at the time, I couldn't hang out with the boys, and I was upset, but I think that changed my life for the good, actually.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
All right. As we wrap up, one of the questions that we ask all of our panelists in this series is, if you could tell your elementary, middle, or high school self something now, what would that be? So looking back, if you could talk to yourself in elementary school, middle school, or high school and tell that person something now, what would you tell you?
Man, that contradicts everything that I just said in my last post. Because I would tell myself, girls in the world ain't nothing but trouble. Leave them alone. Leave them alone.
I know. I would tell myself, I think at an early age, when I first started making money and credit, I didn't know anything about money or credit, man. You know, you coming from a situation where your parents couldn't teach you nothing, you know. So when I first started making money and I had credit to be able to go buy a nice house, I didn't know understand. I should have been buying investment properties more at an early age. Not buying a car, putting rims on it. In stock market, these things I had to learn later on my own. And there was no matter of fact, there should be some system in school that teaches these things to children because
taxes.
Yeah, taxes. Because a lot of times, you start making money, probably money you was making, you got to worry about taxes. You got to know. So these things are very important. Your credit, keep your credit A1. If somebody give you something, pay it back. Because that's going to lead to when you get older, you're not going to be 20 forever. You're not going to be 25. When you start getting older, you're going to have things that you need to have in place that takes good financial planning, good credit. So I would say those are things I should have been on top of at an early age.
And I agree with that because people understand credit is a whole lot better than money, to be honest with you.
Yeah, good credit will open some doors. And you're right. Like how well do we emphasize that in schools to help kids really understand that and how how to make good decisions and how to and also just school wise, how can the education that you get in different fields, in the trades, what does that path look like to going into the trades, using your hands and just what you can do with the funds that you get from the work that you can do there. And I think we're really limited in exposing kids to just different ways of making a living. And so, and I'll say that for me too. I only had certain thoughts about different career paths or career options that I could have. And so, but the more that we can expose kids to seeing different things, ways of managing money, how money can grow, I think that'll be really helpful. Thank y'all for sharing.
And one more thing, hold on real quick. And I'm sure Mr. Evans had this because I go through it. You cannot, once you get on your feet, get successful, you cannot help everybody. You can't.
Can I help everybody? Can I take everybody with you? You got to help yourself first before you can help anybody. So as soon as you go up a notch,
I promise you, one year,
all your money out and drop back down.
I gave away more money 1 year than people make a year. I gave away. And I'm like, how do people bills get paid when I'm overseas? Jeez. You can't do it. And if I had that back right now, I'd be all right. Look, I won't be on base working right now.
Hey, look,
okay. Seriously, man, you can't help everybody.
So you can help somebody, but you can't help everybody.
My situation is different than his because I was working hard for my money. He was out there doing 3 snakes getting paid. So he can a little more. When you sweating in the sun, that sun on your neck, you be a little tighter with that dollars.
You looking at the games, not the practices, man. Them 3 a day.
Hold on, practice. You talking about practice? You talking about practice?
Hey, look, Kobe Bryant, damn, was my coach. We did that. We practiced.
Hey guys, man, I appreciate you guys so much joining us. We're glad that you're here. Dr. Bullock and I are going to talk. I'm going to send you guys backstage. Don't go off. Just hang out right there for a second, and we'll be right back to speak with you guys. I appreciate it. Hold on for a second. Dr. Bullock, so that kind of concludes. We're at the season finale of King's Conversations. Any final words you'd like to say as we sign off for the last time this season for King's Conversations?
I just want to, first of all, Mr. Porter, I want to thank you for this brainchild of yours to start this King's Conversation series. It has been a phenomenal run, and I look forward to us bringing it back next year. I want to thank all of our guests that we have had. We have had some amazing guests sharing just some great advice and great insight to our Kings. And of course, above all else, I thank the Kings that have been joining us, our Kings and our Kings coordinators, our young men in our schools that are, participating in these programs and growing into leaders. And are already leaders. So shout out to the Kings, shout out to the Kings coordinators, and thank you, Mr. Porter, for all that you've done to put this together.
Well, Dr. Bullock, before we go, and before I give my comments, there was a question in the chat comments, and I need you to see if you're going to respond to what you see.
Mr. Thomas, I have not prepared anything for this particular conversation, but maybe I'll have something in the future. We'll get that'll be season 2. Season 2.
Well, Dr. Bullock, first, I'd like to thank you for your leadership for the Office of Equity Affairs. I'd like to thank our superintendent for all of the leadership in Durham, as well as our Board of Education. I'd like to thank all of the King coordinators for all of the hard work that they continuously do on a daily basis with our Kings. Thank you to our Kings themselves, as well as their parent or guardian. I just genuinely believe that our Kings are geniuses, every single one of them. I believe they're going to be successful in anything that they want to do. We just want to use this as an avenue to expose them to wonderful opportunities. And I'll just leave everybody with this. And it's really, really simple. If your presence doesn't make a difference in anyone's life, your absence will not matter. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you in season 2.